The funeral flowers were still fresh when my brother posted the photo. It was a picture of my taped-up cardboard boxes stacked by the front door, captured from the top of the stairs like a trophy. His caption read, "Finally, the parasite is gone. House is clean." My phone blew up with texts from mutual friends, some pitying, some mocking. For 5 years, I was the dutiful sister who sacrificed her youth, her career, and her sanity to nurse our dying mother while my brother traveled the world on inherited money. To him, my moving day was his ultimate victory, the moment he finally erased me from our family home. He stood at the window, smirking as I loaded the final trunk into my rusty sedan. He thought he'd successfully thrown me out with nothing but $20,000 and a broken heart. He never saw this coming. My name is Emily, and at 26 years old, I was forced to face the darkest side of human greed. The funeral flowers were still fresh, the scent of lilies heavily lingering in the air, when my older brother Julian decided to destroy me. For 5 agonizing years, I had been the invisible pillar of our household. While Julian lived a lavish, carefree lifestyle traveling across Europe and documenting his adventures for social media, I was the one holding our dying mother's hand. I managed her grueling medication schedules, spent sleepless nights in cold hospital corridors, and watched my own youth and career aspirations evaporate. I did it out of pure love. But to Julian, my sacrifice made me a target. The moment Mother passed, Julian blew back into town like a hurricane, wearing his grief like an expensive, tailored suit. He didn't want to mourn. He wanted to claim his prize. Within days, he dropped a legal bombshell on me, claiming Mother had left him the entirety of the estate. He gave me a brutal ultimatum. I had 72 hours to pack my life into cardboard boxes and get out of the only home I had ever known. As I dragged my final taped-up box down the hallway, I saw Julian standing at the top of the stairs. He held his phone up, a malicious smirk plastered across his face, and snapped a photo of my struggle. Minutes later, my phone began to vibrate violently. A mutual friend sent me a screenshot of Julian's latest public post. It was the photo of my moving boxes, captioned with the words, "Finally, the parasite is gone. House is clean." He thought he had successfully thrown me out into the cold with nothing but $20,000 and a broken heart. He truly never saw what was coming next. The morning sun offered no warmth as I sat in the polished downtown office of Arthur Vance, our family's longtime attorney. The floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over a bustling city that felt completely indifferent to my world-shattering. Arthur sat across from me, repeatedly wiping his gold-rimmed glasses, refusing to meet my eyes. The silence between us grew heavy, suffocating, until he finally slid a thick manila folder across the mahogany desk. It was the heavily modified will Julian had used as a weapon to evict me. "Emily," Arthur began, his voice strained and unnaturally low, "I need you to look over these final terms. According to this document, executed just 4 months ago, Julian inherits the entire multi-million-dollar property, the family business, and all primary investments. Your portion is set at a flat $20,000. Every word felt like a physical blow to my chest. $20,000 for 5 years of sleepless nights, medical care, and giving up my entire life. Didn't make sense. Mother had promised me, repeatedly, that we would be taken care of equally. Arthur leaned forward, his professional composure cracking just enough for me to see the genuine worry beneath. He tapped a specific signature line on the document. Legally, Julian's paperwork is currently binding. However, if you look at the dates, something feels incredibly wrong here. If you choose to contest this, Emily, I must warn you. Julian has the estate's capital to drag this out for years. A legal battle will completely bankrupt you before you ever see a courtroom. He begged me to think carefully. Julian was counting on me being too broke, too exhausted, and too intimidated to fight back. He wanted me to sign the release and vanish. That warning from Arthur rang in my ears all night. I returned to the empty house for my very last evening, surrounded by the haunting ghosts of my past. Julian had already gone out to celebrate his legal victory with his friends, leaving the house dead quiet. I couldn't sleep. The restlessness in my chest pushed me up the creaking stairs to the dusty attic storage room, a place untouched since Mother first fell ill. I needed to pack up her old vintage sewing machine, the one she used to teach me how to stitch when I was a little girl. As I dragged the heavy iron machine across the room, a sharp, loud scraping sound echoed in the silence. The floor shifted slightly beneath my sneakers. I knelt down on the dusty wood, pulling back an old, faded rug, and discovered a loose floorboard. My heart hammered against my ribs as I pried the wood away. Hidden deep within the dark cavity was a small, dusty steel lockbox. I didn't need a key. The combination was simply my own birth date. When the lid clicked open, tears welled in my eyes. Inside lay Mother's true personal diary, alongside official medical evaluations from a top independent neurologist, dated just weeks before her passing. The medical reports proved with absolute, undeniable certainty that her mental clarity had been perfect right up until the end. But the most shocking item was at the very bottom. A second, unrecorded, legally notarized will executed in secret. The dates showed it was written long after the fraudulent document Julian was using to kick me out. As I read the sharp, elegant cursive of Mother's actual final wishes, the room seemed to spin. I wasn't holding a tragedy, I was holding a trap. Reading through Mother's true final will, the dark reality of our family's finances began to unravel. The grand estate, the thriving family business, the image of absolute wealth that Julian flaunted to the world. It was all an elaborate illusion. Julian had been siphoning money from Mother's accounts for years to fund his luxury lifestyle. To cover his tracks, he had forged her signature on massive commercial loans, heavily leveraging the family property. The house was burdened with a hidden $1.5 million lien, and the business was actively drowning in structural debt. Julian hadn't just been waiting for Mother to die. He had been desperately rushing to inherit the estate so he could use the remaining assets to pay off his furious creditors. Mother wasn't blind. Her diary entries revealed she had discovered his betrayal months before her passing. Knowing his manipulative nature, she had engineered a brilliant, devastating poison pill disguised as an inheritance. She had quietly transferred all her actual liquid savings, nearly $3.5 million, into a heavily protected trust account that Julian didn't even know existed. The real will left the choice entirely up to me. I had the legal right to claim everything, or if I chose, I could voluntarily sign a specific gift deed transferring the primary residence and business assets directly to Julian. If I accepted the properties, I would inherit a mountain of legal headaches and crushing debt. But if I let Julian take them, the millions of dollars in liability would transfer directly to his name. He would legally own the houses, but he would also own the catastrophic debt. Looking at the documents, a cold sense of clarity washed over me. Julian wanted the estate so badly. I was going to let him have it. The next morning, I put on the performance of a lifetime. I called Julian, keeping my voice trembling and thick with simulated defeat. I told him I was too exhausted to fight, that $20,000 was enough, and that I just wanted to move on with my life. He could barely contain the malicious glee in his voice as he told me to meet him at the house to pack the remainder of my things. When I arrived, I quietly signed the initial release papers his lawyer had forwarded, letting him believe he had completely crushed my spirit. I methodically loaded the final taped-up cardboard boxes into the trunk of my rusty sedan, deliberately acting as pathetic as possible. Julian stood by the large bay window of the living room, a smug, victorious smirk plastered across his face as he watched me struggle. He didn't offer to help with a single heavy load. Instead, he pulled out his phone, captured that humiliating photo from the top of the stairs like a trophy, and uploaded it to social media with that infamous caption. "Finally, the parasite is gone. House is clean." I sat in my car and watched the notifications roll in. I saw our mutual friends leaving comments, mocking my sudden eviction, while Julian basked in his public victory. He thought he had successfully thrown me out into the cold with nothing. He had no idea that while he was busy collecting likes and celebrating his newfound wealth, I was driving straight to a high-profile legal team with Mother's real lockbox securely riding in my passenger seat. I let him enjoy his golden moment for 3 full weeks, watching him post updates about his grand inheritance, while my new lawyers quietly laid the trap. 3 weeks later, the trap snapped shut. My phone rang at dawn, and for the first time in my life, Julian sounded completely unraveled. The arrogant golden boy was gone, replaced by a frantic, stuttering mess. He demanded I meet him at the family business headquarters immediately, screaming that Mom's old creditors were threatening to freeze his personal bank accounts and seize the house. He actually expected me to bail him out using my meager savings. Instead, I walked into the grand conference room wearing a tailored black suit, accompanied by my new elite legal team. Julian was pacing the floor, his face pale and sweating, while his lawyer sat frozen at the head of the mahogany table. "Emily, thank God," Julian gasped, rushing toward me. "There's been some administrative error with the business debt. You need to sign a co-liability waiver right now so we can sort this out." I didn't say a word. I simply gestured to my attorney, who stepped forward and laid a thick stack of certified documents onto the table. It was the forensic financial audit, Mother's real neurologist reports, and the certified copy of her true final will. "What is this?" Julian's lawyer asked, his voice shaking as he put on his reading glasses. I watched the exact second the color drained entirely from his face. He turned to Julian, his lips trembling. "Julian, you told me your mother was incompetent when she signed the asset transfers. This report completely disproves that. And this will." He stopped, choking on his words. He looked at Julian like he was looking at a dead man walking. "She didn't leave you an empire. She left you a financial execution. You legally own the debts now, and there is no way out." The absolute panic in Julian's eyes was the most satisfying thing I had ever witnessed. Because he had rushed to sign the property transfers and bragged on social media about owning the estate, he had legally assumed every single dollar of the $2 million debt. To avoid immediate criminal fraud charges for his past forged signatures, he had no choice but to let the bank liquidate the family business. The grand house was foreclosed on just a month later. The arrogant golden boy who had proudly labeled me a parasite was forced to move into a cramped, noisy studio apartment, working 2 menial jobs just to keep his furious creditors from putting him behind bars. Meanwhile, I quietly walked away with a protected $3.5 million trust account Mother had safely set aside for me. I used a fraction of that money to buy a beautiful sunlit cottage overlooking the rugged Pacific coast, a peaceful sanctuary where I could finally rebuild the life I had put on hold for so long. Every morning, I wake up to the soothing sound of crashing waves, completely free from the suffocating shadows of my brother's cruel manipulation. Mother's final brilliant trap hadn't just saved me from financial ruin. It had completely stripped Julian of his unearned power and given me the ultimate poetic justice. Now, I'm curious about all of you who have stayed with me and listened to my journey until the very end. What would you have done if you found that hidden lockbox in my position? Would you have let him take the trap, or would you have fought him openly in court? Comment your thoughts below and let me know the city you're watching from today.